If you speak out against any church and their leadership, you are a rebellious, disgruntled child of God, and you are placing a curse on yourself, according to some folks. And that's not the case.
Welcome to the Nick Speaks podcast, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud for the disabled community. Tune in every Tuesday, and don't forget to subscribe. And now your host, Nicholas Comstock.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this brand new installment of the Nick Speaks podcast, the podcast where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud about the issues that matter to the disabled the most. And we speak up, speak out, and speak loud about everything else in between. I'm your host, Nick Comstock. You guys, I am so glad that you're here with me on this Tuesday. I don't know why I started laughing right there, but we're just going to keep going. I am so glad you're here with me on this Tuesday. And whether you're starting your day with me or whether you're having some Panera bread in the middle of your day at lunch, I love Panera bread, by the way. It's one of my favorites. Or whether you're putting your kids to bed and you're just winding down, because I'm sure for some of you, you might begin the first week of school this week. So I know everybody's the parents are excited about school beginning. The kids, maybe not so much, but it's a win-win for the parents and kind of a, oh, do we have to go to school, mom and dad? And mom and dad who have to explain, yes, you have to go to school, because if you don't go to school, then I go to jail, and you won't have a mom and daddy to take care of you. So I hope everyone is having a wonderful start to the school year, if you've started already. And let's make it a great year. And also, I want to say that when I was in school, we didn't start until like late August, like at the end of August. But to be honest with you, I don't understand why schools start in August at all, because then everybody gets a day off for Labor Day. So why not just do the sensible thing and start after Labor Day? I don't understand. Never made sense to me, but whatever. It is what it is. So if you're starting school, hope you're getting school off to a good start. You guys, I always like to share with you before I get in the episode, the actual episode, what I'm talking about, what I've been up to. And I've done some cool things this week. So for the first time in a long time, I went to my public library here in my area. And here's my question. Why are public libraries still a thing? Like, I don't understand it. I went in there, and I will tell you, public libraries of today are not the public library that I grew up with. The public library, you had to go in there and actually be quiet. It was a place of solitude and a place where somebody can go get work done, a place where somebody can go read and just have maybe a time to relax and read a favorite book, or even I think they had a room where you could just go watch movies when I was growing up. And of course, you had all the great reading programs of the summer that, if you did so many books in a certain amount of time, you got like gift certificates to McDonald's or something like that. I don't know if they still do that in local libraries anymore. And then the greatest thing, I think, was the computers. Everybody went to the library to get on the computers, and they used to rent out video games, or not video games. Well, the video games of my day, which were called computer games. They used to rent out computer games, and you know what? We had to stop getting computer games from the library because they gave our computer viruses. So after a couple viruses on our computer, my parents were like, no more. And, but yeah, it was so different. Now you go into a public library and there's kids running around playing with toys. They're screaming. There's no There's no sense of quietness or solitude anymore. And also, I found out something really annoying about the public library now. I went up to the quote unquote librarian, if you can even call them that anymore. And I went up to her and I said, do you know where all of your comedy DVDs are at? Because I have a DVD player and I don't have access to all the streaming services to watch movies, and no, I don't want to pay to watch a movie either. And so I said, do you know where all of your comedy movies are at? And they said, all of our DVDs are kind of just mixed. You have to go find them. So not only is there no quietness or no solitude in their library anymore, there's no alphabetical order. Are you kidding me? Like, what's the point of this? So my caregiver and I just, walked out, and I ended up having lunch with a friend of mine and ended up going to Red Robin, which is one of my favorite restaurants. I tried they have a new fish sandwich at Red Robin right now. And I love fried fish. But going forward, I'm going to stick with a burger at Red Robin. I didn't think it was that great. And I will say, though, we had their onion ring tower, and their onion rings are the best, along with their campfire sauce. So get that. And of course, we had the bottomless fries. It was awesome. And awesome day. I think I did that on Thursday. And then also, this is very important. I became a Sam's Club member this week. Woohoo! I became a Sam's Club member this week. So on Thursday, which was a really packed day, I went to Sam's Club with my caregiver. And that day, I did not become a member, but I said, hey, let's just go around and walk around. And and so I said, I need to buy some ranch. So my caregiver let me use his club card to buy the ranch. And then I went over to the cafe and I got one of their uh, ice cream sundaes, their berry sundae. And the sundae was only $1.86. And the person who was preparing the sundae for me let me use her Sam's Club card. And I was just so blessed to be able to do that. And then I came home and I talked to my chat GPT, and I found out that Sam's Club has a deal going on right now. This is not a sponsor for Sam's Club, but they have a deal going on right now where you can get their basic membership, which is the Sam's Club standard membership, for $25 for the first year. It usually is $65 for the first year. And you can also do this with their Sam's Club Plus membership, which is usually $120, but through right now, when this podcast is airing, through September 30th, you can get both memberships. You can get the standard membership for $25, or you can get the Sam's Club membership for Sam's Club Plus membership for $55 per year, not per year, for the first year. Excuse me. You can get both memberships for the first year at a discounted price. So the Sam's Club basic membership, which they call the Sam's Club Standard, you can get it for $25 only for the first year. And then you can get the Sam's Club Plus membership, which is what I got, for $55 only for the first year. And then after that, it'll go up to its regular standard prices, which the Sam's Club basic membership is $65 per year, and then the Sam's Club Plus membership is $120. So it is a really great deal. And I went with the Sam's Club Plus membership because you get free shipping on orders over $50. You get free delivery. And so it's going to be awesome. I have one right here in my area. And I really went for the Sam's Club membership, because you guys, we talked about the prepaid, the home delivered meals issue. And we talked about how that the state believes that that's a duplication of services. And even though I think that's ridiculous and stupid, um, obviously that's a hurdle that I'm not going to be able to beat the state at yet. So I was like, you know what? Sam's Club has a lot of pre-made good meals, and so I'm going to go home and see how much a Sam's Club membership costs. And I went back on Friday, got my Sam's Club Plus membership for $55 for the first year, and I love it. And you know what's awesome? Your membership is good for two people, and one of the two people doesn't even have to be living with you. So, not one of the two people. Your membership is good for you and somebody else. And that somebody else doesn't have to be living with you. So, my caregiver got a free membership because of me. Isn't that awesome? I'm always looking for ways to give back to my caregivers, and the fact that they were able to get this for free because of me, that's incredible. So yes, and I got their they have a bunch of prepaid. I keep saying prepaid. They have a bunch of pre-made meals at Sam's Club, and one of them that I got for the first time was the rotisserie chicken enchiladas. And so I had my staff put that in the oven for me on Saturday, and you put it in the oven for like 45 minutes. Boom, you have dinner for 2 or 3 days. Let me tell you though, I don't think my system likes the pre-made chicken enchiladas because oh boy, did I have some aftermath after that. If you're a caregiver, I'll just let you imagine. If you're not, ask a caregiver down in the comments and they'll tell you what the aftermath was. But anyway, so yeah, I'm just so excited about my Sam's Club membership. Should have done it a long time ago. It's going to make my food stamps go a lot further, and I'm really, really excited about it. So I've been having a lot of fun. Went to the local library, went to Sam's Club, went to see a friend of mine that unfortunately is in the first stages of dementia, and my friend has to sell her house and sell everything because she has to go into assisted living. And, dementia, if you have a family member struggling with that, it's just a bitch. And I went to see my friend yesterday, and I promised her, excuse me, not yesterday. I went to see my friend this week, and I went, and I told her, I said, I'm going to come see you every week from now on. And I'm sorry that you're going through this. And she's just been so sweet to me. So if you have a family member that struggles with dementia, or somebody who does, make them feel loved. And if you have a family member that struggles with it, I know my grandfather struggles with it. Just give them a little extra love and attention. And remember them for who they were. Don't remember them for who they are now, because who they are is not who they really are. So that I want to say. So yeah, I've been getting out a lot more, and I really enjoy it, and I always love sharing with you guys now what I'm doing during the week and what's going on. My social media on Facebook is blowing up. My TikTok is blowing up. So if you're not on those platforms, you can follow me on Facebook or request to be my friend. I don't think I've hit the 5,000 mark yet. So you can follow me on Facebook or request to be my friend at Nicholas Comstock. You don't have to use the @ sign for Facebook. Just type in my name. And then on TikTok, you can follow me at Nicholas Comstock. You have to use the @ sign there. But yeah, things are going well. as far as that. And I really appreciate all of your guys' support. We've also really grown over here on YouTube. As of this recording, we are close to 900 subscribers if we're not there already. So if you are not subscribed here on YouTube yet, please do so. And when you subscribe, hit that little notification bell so you can get notified every time Nick Speaks uploads a new episode. And for those of you that are listening on our streaming audio platforms, please give us a good rating so that other people can find the Nick Speaks podcast. All right, you guys, that's pretty much the housekeeping. Now I really want to talk to you guys about something that I've just really been struggling with for a long time. You know, my relationship with church is complicated. Not my relationship with God. My relationship with church is complicated. Um, so I had been at a church here in Columbus, Ohio for about, I think, 5 years at the time, 6 years maybe. And then I had left for a year and went back here just recently. I had started going to a newer church in Columbus, and I left because of some doctrinal issues. I'll get into that in a little bit. Honestly, you guys, I don't know if I'm going to continue to go to church every week. And if you're out there, and if you're a Christian, and if you're feeling the same way, I'm right there with you. Because church to me is just a bunch of man made rules. It's a way to get your money, because church obviously has to have money to run. But I just, I'm so done with church. I talked about it a little bit this week on my social media platforms. Church people are some of the clickiest people in the world. And if you're not in their group, then you're just not a part of anything, and they're not going to talk to you. And it really irritates me because I came out of a culture. You guys heard me say that I've grown up in the independent fundamental Baptist movement. And I grew up in a culture where everything you worship the man that is at the pulpit instead of the God that is supposed to be on the inside of the man. And you did not defy or disobey your pastor in any way, or you were deemed as rebellious and the church shunned you. And I really struggled with it. I've really struggled with it since my pastor that I grew up under got fired in 2012. Like, he's over here preaching against be godly, be pure, be separate from the world. And then all of a sudden, he's caught up in a scandal, harms a 16-year-old girl, and ends up going to prison for 12 years, doesn't even serve his 12-year sentence, gets out 2 years early. And I just, I've never been the same since 2012. Because I really looked up to the man of God that I was under. And I've always been told, don't get close to, basketball stars or rock stars or sports athletes. Get close to the man of God. And ladies, get close to the women of God. And make them your heroes. Don't make Hollywood stars or sports athletes your heroes. Don't have their posters on your wall. Have the men of God on your wall. And I never had a poster of a man of God on my wall. I think that's weird. Well, maybe it's not weird if you're in the picture, I guess. So I've never had that, but I've always had a deep love and respect for men of God and men of the pulpit. And now, to be honest with you, I'm starting to lose that. I left my current where I was. I left where I was back in 2025 because of some things. I was really angry. I was really upset. And I left, and I just recently came back because I was like, I need a community, but I don't want to be with people that I don't know. I want to be with people that already know me. I had started going to a new church in February of this year, and I love the pastor, still do. If he calls, I'll pick up the phone. I think he may actually find out through this podcast that I'm left, but I don't know. I think he knows by now that I'm left. But I left the current church that I was at back in February because they said you have to be baptized in order for your sins to be forgiven. And that is not biblical. And it's certainly something that I don't believe, nor is it biblical. And I know that you can't get church to move on their main doctrinal points, so that's why I left. The church that I was going to since February, they didn't have service on 4th of July weekend, so the last service that I attended was the service right before 4th of July weekend, and then I haven't been back since. I have gone back to the church that I originally left back in July of last year, or June of last year. I left in June of last year. And at this point, I'm just going to church because I need to be around people. I'm not going there to make God happy. To be honest with you, I mean, as long as I have a strong relationship with God, I don't think he's going to care whether I'm in a church on Sunday. I'm just going to a church right now to get out of my house so I can have something to do because I don't want to sit around here forever and be depressed, and I struggle with that. And it's funny. I made a post this week about how I want friends locally and how I'm really struggling. I just want people to hang out with. And a lot of people told me to go to church. You want friends? Go to church. And you know what? I've found friends at church, but let me tell you something about church. If you're not there for a week or two or 3 or 4, they're not going to notice you're gone because they don't care. All the, church people are in their own little cliques, and people in general are they're tied up in their own life. And I went back to my current church. I've been back since I would say 1st of July. First week of July, I went back to the church that I left back in June. And you would have thought I would have never left that church. Everybody was just asking me, hey, you haven't been here for a long time. It's really good to see you. Da 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 da. You would have thought I would have never left. They're asking me where I've been. Well, why didn't you call me within the past year to figure out where I've been? Why didn't you come see me at my apartment to figure out where I've been for the last year? I haven't moved for the last year. So what's the problem? And so I just feel like with church, especially, if you're out of sight, you're out of mind. And if you don't believe in the doctrines that the church holds to, then you might as well just get out of there and leave. And if you speak out against any church, it doesn't matter if it's big, small, 3 people, 3,000 people. If you speak out against any church and their leadership, you are a rebellious, disgruntled child of God. And you are placing a curse on yourself, according to some folks. And that's not the case. People like to use the verse, touch not mine anointed, when talking about criticizing the man of God. And that verse, the misinterpretation of that verse, has done so much damage to the body of Christ. I can't even tell you. It has allowed pastors to remain drunk with power because people think touch not mine anointed means we can't say anything bad about the pastor because if we do, God's going to do something bad to us. No, that's not what that means. I've done a little bit of research on it, not enough to come here and do a full podcast about it, but maybe I will one day. But I know that that's not what that verse means. And anybody who has any common sense would know that touch not mine anointed does not mean that you can't be critical of a pastor. Um, I think if more people were actually critical of more pastors, our churches would be in better shape. I think if our pastors were held more accountable than what they have been, our churches would be in better shape. And I really struggle with church because you know what? If the man or woman of God, whoever's in charge of the church where you go to church, if they're not living the way that they're telling us to live, why should we give them any time? I mean, I would feel more comfortable if a pastor came to his or her pulpit, and I'm not here to argue whether or not women can be pastors. I do have my theology about that, but I'm not here to argue that right now. If a pastor came to his or her pulpit and said, look, I'm struggling with pornography and I need to step down for a period of time, or my marriage is not what it needs to be, and I can't preach to you if my life is not what it needs to be. You know what? Yeah, they may lose their pulpit depending on the severity of the issue and the biblical repercussions if we're going to follow the Bible. But at least I would have more respect for the man and woman who stands in the pulpit and says, I'm not perfect, as opposed to the man and the woman who stands in the pulpit and says, your marriage needs to be better. Don't sacrifice your kids for your ministry. But then behind the scenes, your marriage is crap and your kids don't want anything to do with you or the ministry or God. But you're going to go tell other pastors, oh, don't sacrifice your kids for the ministry. But yet your kids don't even know who the hell you are, pastor. And, I just, a couple weeks ago, I got a call from a dear, dear friend of mine and he said, Nick, you won't believe who just got arrested. Another pastor just got arrested. And I said, who? And I'm not one of these podcasts that's going to drop names. So if you're wanting me to drop a name, I'm not going to. But he told me. And to be honest with you, this pastor that got arrested, I was shocked. I really was. Um, this pastor that got arrested, I grew up hearing in my late teens, early 20s, and people referred to him in our movement as the modern King David, meaning that he could play instruments, he could preach, he could sing. I mean, he just had all the markers. And he got arrested for sending inappropriate photos to a minor. And when is it going to stop? Like, when is accountability going to come to the pulpit? You know, my parents who are still in the IFB movement, anytime somebody, falls or something else happens, they like to say, oh, the problem with the church today is we don't have fire brimstone preachers. We don't have preachers. My dad likes to call it, we don't have preachers shucking the corn. Shucking the corn. We need preachers who shuck the corn. And I'm sitting over here going, well, you know what? All the preachers who shuck the corn and give fire and brimstone, if that's what the church really needs, why are all the pastors who do that style of preaching in prison, or they're divorced, or come to find out we have multiple fire brimstone preachers who have affairs with women in the church? If fire brimstone preaching is what we need, why are all the fire brimstone preachers dropping like flies? It's because these fire brimstone preachers are too busy breathing fire and brimstone on everybody else, and they don't have anyone else. They don't have anyone in their life breathing fire and brimstone back on them and saying, get your life right, get your heart right. They don't have anyone holding them accountable because they're the pastor. They're way up here. For those of you that are watching me, they're way up here. And us little church people, we're way down at the bottom. Unless unless we're super rich, then we matter to the pastor and his family, and they know our name. Unless we're not super rich, then they don't know. Then they could care less. Then it's, why aren't we giving more? And again, I will pose the question: if fire and brimstone preaching is what the church needs today in America, then why are the fire and brimstone preachers falling like flies? Why? It's because they are just doing their weekly sermon prep for a job, and they don't have a fire brimstone walk with God like they expect us to. And really, I'm tired of church. I'm tired of church as usual. I'm tired of, oh, we'll go in for a half an hour or 2 hours, and we'll have a big praise break and say, oh, the Holy Spirit's done enough preaching today. I don't think I need to preach. Really? Is that because the Holy Spirit's done enough preaching, or you were too busy looking at porn the night before preacher, and you couldn't get your sermon together? Did the Holy Spirit really take over, or is it the lack of your sermon preparation? I'm tired of this. I mean, we're still arguing over contemporary Christian music, but yet we have these IFB pastors that are falling like nobody's business. And then we have Pentecostals who are doing the exact same thing that the IFB churches are doing. They're preaching fire and brimstone, and be in church every service and give your tithes. But number one, the pastor's not in church every service. Number two, the pastor's probably not tithing. And why do we need to do that anyway? Oh, you ran out of money for your church? Well, guess what? You're the one that decided to start the church. You're the one that said God called you to start the church. So why don't you do yourself a favor? Why don't you do yourself the same favor that you tell us, which is, well, it's not really the same favor. Why don't you do the same thing you tell us and just live by faith for a month? I would love to see pastors who say, you know what? I'm not going to take up a tithe. I'm not going to take up an offering. for a month, and I'm going to believe God to sustain this ministry for a month. If you want to give, that's totally up to you. Give. But I'm going to believe God by not taking money from the church members, and I'm going to pour in some money that I already have. Or, you know what? I won't take a salary for a month, and we'll just have the church put the money in that they would give me for a salary. We're just going to have them pour that right back into the ministry. And we're going to use that to help our members who are struggling, who don't have a car, who barely can make ends meet. We're going to use the money that the church would pay me, and we're going to pour that back into our members. Why don't we have churches doing that? Yeah, we have mega pastors who don't take a salary, but what are they doing with that salary that they don't take from the church? What is the church doing with that salary? Yeah, they don't take a salary from the church because they make 7 or 8 figures elsewhere. So what are they doing with that 7 or 8 figures that they make elsewhere? It's just really irritating. And then you can't go to a church. God forbid you go to a church and you have a different biblical opinion. Heaven forbid. Don't do that. Don't come into a church and try to challenge the pastor and his preaching and teaching. Don't do that. You know, when I became a Christian, I was told that you don't have to go to church in order to be saved. But then we have pastors that get up and say almost every week, if you're not in church on a weekly basis and if that doesn't bother you, you might not even be saved. Whoa, 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 whoa. When did church become a qualification to get in heaven? Or, people that I grew up with will say, well, you had bad sickness, or you're having a bad financial time because you don't tithe, or you're not in church like you should, or you're not training up your kids in the way they should go. Let's talk about tithing for a second. My parents have been tithers all of my life. I've never known my parents not to have a financial struggle. My parents to this day still have financial struggles. Your financial struggles are not based on whether you give 10% of your income to the church. Stop perpetrating that lie, pastors. Stop. You know what? Your finances are bad because most Americans live above their means. It's not because they don't give 10% to the church. I saw a video this week on social media, and it said, I gave 10% of my money to the church and it ruined my finances. I followed God and it ruined my life, and I don't do either now, and I have a great life. First of all, I don't support that message. Your finances weren't ruined because you gave 10% of it to the church. Your finances were ruined because you didn't have good money knowledge. You were probably a spender, not a saver. And as far as, you fallen God and you have the worst life ever, you sound like you have deeper issues that I can't get into, but it's not because you followed God. Because God is not the source of your problems. You're the source of your problems. Our problems come from mistakes that we make. They don't come because of God. They don't come because We just were given bad cards in life. They come by the decisions that we make. And so I hate it when people blame God or blame the church for reasons that their families are destroyed, or reasons that they don't tithe uh, anymore. No, your family is destroyed because you didn't make the correct priorities what they should have been. You didn't make your kids a priority. You made the ministry a priority. And that's why your kids don't want anything to do with ministry, you, or God. It has nothing to do with that pastor that you sat under. It has nothing to do with ministry not understanding your time, but it has everything to do with you not putting the right boundaries in place and saying, God chose me as the priest of my home, and I'm going to make sure my family comes first. And yeah, so, I struggle with the whole church thing. A friend and I were talking about it. We talk about it often when we get together. And he was talking to me about he has a friend that's a Lutheran pastor, and he was talking to me about, I listen to the messages and a lot of them are good, but then at the end of the day, it's all about we suck. We can never end up where we're going to be because we'll never be where we should be. And like, what's the point? And you know what? As someone who's been a Christian since 2014 and grown up in a Christian home from birth, I'm starting to ask that question myself. I'm not questioning my belief in God. I'm questioning my belief and my stance within the church. And all I'm here to promote today is if you don't have a relationship with Jesus, you might as well just forget the whole thing because a relationship with Jesus is all that matters. It's all that matters. My relationship with Jesus is not what it should be, but thank God it's not what it used to be. And if I didn't have a relationship with Jesus, I wouldn't be here talking to you on this podcast today. A relationship with Jesus is all you need. A strong relationship with Jesus is all you need. A strong relationship with Jesus and his word is all you need. You don't need to be in a church house every week. Should you go to church? You know what? The Bible says not to forsake yourself and assembling with others. So I guess you should, but I think we need to abolish the whole big mega church thing and start house churches again. I think we just need to. There doesn't need to be any major corporation. There doesn't need to be any big celebratory worship band. There doesn't need to be any of that. And we just need to sit around a conference table, have somebody open a word, and say, hey, this is what I got out of the Bible this week. This is what I got out of prayer this week. Or get a bunch of people together in a house and say, you know what? I don't know how you all are doing in your walk with God, but I'm really struggling. And I would like to talk about it. Why do we need all these big churches who are just manipulating people, making us feel awful, and then we see our pastors we see our pastors plastered all over the news for horrific crimes? Why can't Christians just get together and heck, if you want to have a Bible study and coffee together, have a Bible study and have coffee. Heck, if you don't, just have a walk with Jesus. I was already told you don't have to go to church to be saved, but then your salvation is questioned if you don't go to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. And all these things about, oh, Nick, you've never been in a really good church that, has, loved you, and you've never had a really good church community. I've never had a really good community, period, outside of church. I don't have uh I don't have friends right now that I could call and say, "Hey, could you come hang out with me? Could you come pray with me? Could you come do this?" I don't have that outside of church. In fact, I made a couple videos this week asking for friends just to hang out with. And I've gotten hundreds of thousands of responses. You know, I'm not in Ohio, but I'll be your friend. And so I'm going through that. I'm going through those messages and trying to reach out to everybody. But I just, everybody's telling me, oh, go to church. You'll have a good community at church. That's not been my experience. I've had people who absolutely adore me and love me at church. The lady that I talked about at the beginning of the podcast that is now struggling with dementia. When I went to the current church where I go to now, when I was going there for the first couple of years, that lady made me a meal every stinking Sunday of the year. She made me a meal. She sometimes made me two or three so that I would have food throughout the week. When I broke my foot, guess who was there for me? That lady. Nobody from my church came to see me after I broke my foot unless that lady that I'm telling you about got in their face and said, "You need to go see Nick." Nobody did. So yes, I've had people literally adore me. I've had very good friends. And you know what? Most of those friends that are from church, they're elderly people. And I love them. I've come to find out, yes, I want to hang out with people that are in my age group, 35 to 45. Yes, I want to hang out with people in my age group, but you know what? I'm going to get more love and compassion from the gray heads than I would people my own age. Because there's a lady, she passed away at the age of 93. Her name was Eileen Salade, one of the best people that I have ever met in my life. And I don't know what it was. We just met one Sunday at church, and she says, "Nick, I just fell in love with you. You just melted my heart." And she would bring me cards and candy, and um, she would bring my family a Thanksgiving meal once a year, and then again at Christmas, and spoil my family for Christmas. And she went to heaven when she was 93 years old, and I miss her every day. Those are the people that'll really check up on you. If you're going to have friends at church, let me tell you who you can find at church that'll be your friend. Old people. Because the young people or the people in your age group don't care. So I will say I've had a couple good interactions with older people at the churches that I've been to, but it hasn't been the best place to find friends. And I know as you get older, it's, harder to find friends. I know that. But this idea of, we have to go to church in order to please God, or maybe if we don't have a desire to go to church, then we're not saved. That's ridiculous. You're saved because you have the faith and you're trusting God to do what he said he was going to do in his word. It has nothing to do with whether or not you go to church on a weekly basis. And like I said, I'm really struggling with church. And I'll bring up the question again. If fire and brimstone is what we really need in the church, then why are so many preachers who preach fire and brimstone week in and week out ending up in prison, ending up losing their pulpits, their families, their marriages? You want me to tell you why again before I go? It's because they don't have somebody in their life giving them fire and brimstone. and they're only preaching the word 2 or 3 times a week because it's their job to do it and they get a paycheck. It's not a passion for them. They don't want to see lives change. They just want to make sure they get a paycheck at the end of the service. And if they have to, they'll manipulate their members to get it. So really, I mean, I wish we could go back to simpler times um, and I would say a simpler time would be, just follow a person that you look up to spiritually and say, hey, can we start having Bible studies at your house? Or better than that, have a Bible study at your own house. Listen to a sermon, have a Bible study, turn on your worship music, get alone with God until you're not alone anymore, and call it a day. Because this weekly church thing is exhausting. And right now, I'm only going to connect with people and say, hey, let's go get something to eat, or let's do that. I'm not going there. I'm not going to church to hear a message from God. I can hear a message. If I hear a message from God while I'm at church, great. But if I don't, who cares? I can hear a message from God while I'm driving, or while I'm being driven to an appointment, or while I'm sitting here in my office. I can hear a message from God anytime I want. All I have to do is look up to him and talk to him. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about. My relationship with church has been complicated, and that's why I struggle with my own complications. And then I look at pastors and men of God that I looked up to and women of God that I've looked up to, and come to find out they're not as perfect as they portray to be. And it irritates me because they spend years manipulating people to be what they should be, and then they're not even that themselves. And it's just really irritating. So I want to know what you guys think. Tell me down in the comments. Email me at nickspeaksofficial@gmail.com. I want to know what you guys think about today's episode. I want to know what your thoughts are. If you have an idea for a future show, let me know. I'm working on a couple guests here in the future, so hopefully that'll work. We have some sirens going off right now, so I'm gonna get off here because we have some sirens going off. But anyway, I will talk to you guys next Tuesday. This is the Nick Speaks podcast, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud about the issues that matter to the disabled the most, and the podcast where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud about everything else in between. I will see you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Nick Speaks podcast, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud for the disabled community. If today's conversation resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss a new episode. You can find Nick across all platforms by visiting his linktree in the show notes. And please leave a comment to join the conversation. Until next time, keep speaking up, keep speaking out, and keep speaking loud.